We have heard of UFOs many times in the news and have also seen them in many Hollywood movies. Till today, there is no answer to who controls the UFOs. Is it the humans who are just spying on each other, or is the extraterrestrial being? But why does the US government want to release the footage now? Why not before? Recently, the US Navy has also released footage where the UFO was encountered on their radar. And much more footage of UFOs encountered will be released soon. An unidentified flying object, UFO, is any aerial phenomenon that cannot immediately be identified or explained. Till today, there are hundreds of cases reported of UFOs sightings. UFOs became a major subject of interest following the development of rocketry after World War II and were thought by some researchers to be intelligent extraterrestrial life visiting Earth. The first well-known UFO sighting occurred in 1947, when businessman Kenneth Arnold claimed to see a group of 9 high-speed objects near Mount Rainier in Washington while flying his small plane. Arnold estimated the speed of the crescent-shaped objects as several thousand miles per hour and said they moved like saucers skipping on water. In the newspaper report that followed, it was mistakenly stated that the objects were saucer-shaped, hence the term flying saucer emerged. Sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena increased, and in 1948 the U.S. Air Force began an investigation of these reports called Project Sign. The initial opinion of those involved with the project was that the UFOs were most likely sophisticated Soviet aircraft, although some researchers suggested that they might be spacecraft from other worlds, the so-called extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH. Within a year, Project Sign was succeeded by Project Grudge. Later in 1952 it was replaced by the longest-lived of the official inquiries into UFOs, Project Blue Book, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. From 1952 to 1969 Project Blue Book compiled reports of more than 12,000 sightings or events, each of which was ultimately classified as 1. Identified, with a known astronomical, atmospheric, or artificial, human-caused, phenomenon, or 2. Unidentified. The latter category, approximately 6% of the total, included cases for which there was insufficient information to make an identification with a known phenomenon. In the hot summer of 1952, a provocative series of radar and visual sightings occurred near National Airport in Washington, D.C. Although these events were attributed to temperature inversions in the air over the city, not everyone was convinced by this explanation. Meanwhile, the number of UFO reports had climbed to a record high. This led the Central Intelligence Agency to prompt the U.S. government to establish an expert panel of scientists to investigate the phenomena. The Robertson panel met for 3 days in 1953 and interviewed military officers and the head of Project Blue Book. They also reviewed films and photographs of UFOs. Their conclusions were that, 1. 90% of the sightings could be easily attributed to astronomical and meteorological phenomena, example, bright planets and stars, meteors, auroras, ion clouds, or to such earthly objects as aircraft, balloons, birds, and searchlights. 2. There was no obvious security threat, and 3. There was no evidence to support the ETH. Parts of the panel's report were kept classified until 1979, and this long period of secrecy helped fuel suspicions of a government cover-up. A second committee was set up in 1966 at the request of the Air Force to review the most interesting material gathered by Project Blue Book. 2 years later this committee, which made a detailed study of 59 UFO sightings, released its results as Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, also known as the Condon Report, named after Edward U. Condon, the physicist who headed the investigation. The Condon Report was reviewed by a special committee of the National Academy of Sciences. A total of 37 scientists wrote chapters or parts of chapters for the report, which covered investigations of the 59 UFO sightings in detail. Like the Robertson panel, the committee concluded that there was no evidence of anything other than commonplace phenomena in the reports and that UFOs did not warrant further investigation. This, together with a decline in sighting activity, led to the dismantling of Project Blue Book in 1969. Despite the failure of the ETH to make headway with the expert committees, a few scientists and engineers, who had been involved with Projects Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, concluded that a small fraction of the most reliable UFO reports gave definite indications for the presence of extraterrestrial visitors. Hynek founded the Center for UFO Studies, UFOs, which continues to investigate the phenomenon. Another major U.S. study of UFO sightings was the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, ADIP, a secret project that ran from 2007 to 2012. When the existence of the ADIP was made public in December 2017, the most newsworthy aspect of it was a report that the U.S. government possessed alloys and compounds purportedly attained from UFOs that were of unidentifiable nature, but many scientists remain skeptical about this claim. Aside from the American efforts, the only other official and fairly complete records of UFO sightings were kept in Canada, where they were transferred in 1968 from the Canadian Department of National Defence to the Canadian National Research Council. The Canadian records comprised about 750 sightings. Less complete records have been maintained in the United Kingdom, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, and Greece. In the United States, UFOs and the Mutual UFO Network in Bellevue, Colorado, continue to log sightings reported by the public. In the Soviet Union, sightings of UFOs were often prompted by tests of secret military rockets. In order to obscure the true nature of the tests, the government sometimes encouraged the public's belief that these rockets might be extraterrestrial craft, but eventually decided that the descriptions themselves might give away too much information. UFO sightings in China have been similarly provoked by military activity that is unknown to the public. UFO reports have varied widely in reliability, as judged by the number of witnesses, whether the witnesses were independent of each other, the observing conditions, example, fog, haze, type of illumination, and the direction of the sighting. Typically, witnesses who take the trouble to report a sighting consider the object to be of extraterrestrial origin or possibly a military craft, but certainly under intelligent control. This inference is usually based on what is perceived as formation flying by sets of objects, unnatural, often sudden, motions, the lack of sound, changes in brightness or color, and strange shapes. A bright light, such as the planet Venus, often appears to move. Astronomical objects can also be disconcerting to drivers, as they seem to follow the car. Visual impressions of distance and speed of UFOs are also highly unreliable because they are based on an assumed size and are often made against a blank sky with no background object, clouds, mountains, etc., to set a maximum distance. Reflections from windows and eyeglasses produce superimposed views, and complex optical systems, such as camera lenses, can turn point sources of light into apparently saucer-shaped phenomena. Such optical illusions and the psychological desire to interpret images are known to account for many visual UFO reports, and at least some sightings are known to be hoaxes. Radar sightings, while in certain respects more reliable, fail to discriminate between artificial objects and meteor trails, ionized gas, rain, or thermal discontinuities in the atmosphere. Now the US government has decided to show the footage of the UFOs encountered from the date they record, which means there is something to talk about and what they found out in recent years. New footage will be released soon in the following month, and let's all wait until the government confronts the citizens.